So, hi David, how are you doing today?
Good, Candace. So good to see you.
Good to see you too. Could you I know you work for the ICI Institute for Community Inclusion. Could you explain what your role is with still?
Sure. My name is David Hoff. I work, as you said, for the Institute for Community Inclusion. We are a research, training, and technical assistance organization. Although we're based at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, we do work across the country. One of my roles is as the project director for Employment First Missouri, which is a training and technical assistance project, working with the Department of Mental Health, the Division of Developmental Disabilities, to advance employment and to work with service providers and case management entities and DMH on advancing employment for people with intellectual developmental disabilities in Missouri. We also oversee some other work in Missouri, another project on customized employment with the uh, uh, vocational rehabilitation, as well as a direct support professional program to uh, help service providers funded by DMH with their workforce issues and bringing apprentices into direct support professional roles.
So, ca- what is could you explain what informed choice is?
So, informed choice at a simple level is people making choices based on information that they have, uh, and so they can make a choice. It's not just uh, that they know what they're making a choice about. I guess is the easiest way to define it. They know that when they're provided a choice, an option, that they are able to make that choice based on information they have, past experience, and their ability to make choices.
So, it's to have the information before they make the choice about
Yeah,
the
and
choice.
yeah, and it's information, but information comes from having verbal and written information, but it also comes from experience.
Brilliant.
Is really really important part of that, and also an ability to sort of, as I said, experience and making choices is a big piece of that too. That people understand that they have choices and that they can make them.
Um, how does informed choice and employment work together? Which
So everybody, with or without a disability,
mhm,
makes choices about employment and hopefully informed choices about employment. And what an informed choice is in terms of employment starts with a a choice about going to work,
mhm,
understanding what work is, what it's all about, and what it means. And then the second piece of informed choice for employment is that, okay, I want to go to work and I understand what that's about. Now, where do I want to work? What kind of job do I want to have? What kind of hours do I want to have? How much do I want to earn? There is are so what hours do I want to work weekends? Do I want to work holidays, evenings, or daytime? Do I want to work outdoors, indoors? The list goes on and on. There are so many different factors that go into a job and deciding whether you want a particular type of job or not. I think a lot of people don't realize just how many choices they're making. Even though they might not deliberately be making a choice, oh yes, I do want to do that per se. They're actually making a lot of choices about not only the kind of work, but the kind of work environment they will be in. Um, the challenge of informed choice
mhm.
for many people, eh, particularly those with disabilities, are several. One issue is that people often grow up, sadly, not making a lot of choices. That they have parents, well meaning parents, teachers, family members making choices on their behalf. Um, and so they get to be adults and have really had very few opportunities to make choices. And most people start making choices at a very young age. I mean, you start with, do I want to read this book or that book? Do I want this kind of ice cream or that? What do I want to eat? What kind of friends do I have? And what do I want to do for fun? What do I like to do for fun? and all those kind of things. And those are, you get practice making choices and also understanding that sometimes the choices you make are good, some they're not good, but you learn from those and go from there. Obviously, as we get older, the choices we make can become more complicated and have bigger, what we would call implications or impact on our life. Um, one being obviously employment, what we're going to do for work. And the early choices we make about employment, probably less critical. And when we're a teenager, if we have our first jobs, okay, you have a part-time job after school or in the summer, it's not going to be forever. But as you get older, you're making more choices about jobs and careers. So probably more implications to that. And other kind of choices we make are, choices about relationships. And I use this analogy a lot that you know, I didn't ask my wife to marry me on our very first date. We went out
Yeah.
for a while, and I
Yeah.
dated other people before my wife. I had experience in relationships, and then ultimately made a decision to marry my wife. And so it's the same kind of thing with anything. You don't. It's all based on experience. Okay, that relationship went well. That one didn't go so well. You get more of a sense of the kind of person you want to, be a partner with, maybe long term. And a job is the same thing. You try out some things. Yeah, that was, I didn't really like that job, or it was okay, but I really liked this. Oh, I really like the people, that kind of thing, or I like the skills and everything I'm doing there, and the things I get to do, or the atmosphere, whatever that might be. But you're only going to be able to make those choices based on having experience as well. So it is a matter of, as I said, sort of from an early age, making choices, but then being able to use your past experience. Um, the other thing about informed choice is that as a process, and we've done some writing on this and continue to do some work on this. As a process, informed choice obviously starts with asking people their preferences and all of that. But it's more than just asking. It's also going out and, okay, a person says they want to work, I don't know, let's say they want to work as in an auto repair shop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like cars. Okay, that's great. They like cars. They think they might be interesting. But are we just going to say, okay, let's start looking at auto repair shops if they have no experience working in an auto repair shop? No, of course not. They need to go out and, tour some auto repair shops, talk to auto repair people, better understand what that job is about. So in doing strategies that, we often talk about, job tours, um, informational interviews, doing some exploration. So really understanding, it's not just talking about what you want, but actually going out there and experiencing it. And then also, and as issues come up during the course of deciding what you want to do and whether you want to go to work or not. If there are issues or challenges that you encounter, let's say transportation, or
Mm-hmm.
let's say public benefits, or safety concerns, it could be a variety of things. You just say, okay, well, sorry, guess I'm not going to go to work because those are problems.
Yeah.
You know, part of informed choice is addressing those things. The other component that's really important about informed choice, which I don't think we do a particularly great job with in our field, is people with disabilities talking to other people with disabilities, peer to peer. Okay, let me tell you about my work experience. Let me tell you about my job. Let me tell you what I did. Let me tell you what that was like for me. That's another important
Oh,
piece of all of this. And so, so it's not as, I think people think of informed choice as something very simple. It really isn't. So,
yeah. Yeah, and I like um the um the point that you made earlier and on that um having you have that at early in life as a kid, whether it's like doing chores,
yep.
and starting early in life is better than starting when you're about to graduate high school,
Oh yeah.
which I don't know, not to put anyone down, but as a person with a disability, I think people have all expectation lower than other people with non-disability, you know? So I think for for everyone having that choice as when I'm
Mhm.
7 years old, I guess, to do you want to help with cleaning your room. I don't know. You know? So just knowing that it doesn't start at transition age, as what people might say.
Oh, I think that's really a really important point, Candace. And I think there's habits form early in life,
Mm.
behavior forms early in life. And I think by the time you get out of high school, even though all of us change and as we get older, those years, younger years, preteen and teenage years are extremely impactful in terms of formation of a person's sense of what we call sense of self, how they view themselves,
Mm-hmm.
how they view their place in the world. And you're absolutely right. And way too often, we wait till people are 18, 21. Oh, let's help you get your first job. Oh, let's finally give you a chance to have some control and choices in your life. Well, that's not how most of us go through life. We start at a much earlier age. And so it's really important. And I'm no expert on child and teenage development,
Yeah.
but what I've read about it is, yes, I think we have to recognize that once somebody gets in their 20s, this stuff becomes more difficult if they've never really made choices in their life and they've never had people have allowed them to make choices. I also want to really, really emphasize this. Part of informed choice is making mistakes
Yes.
and,
Yes.
and a willingness to, for risk, because we all make mistakes. I've had jobs I didn't like. I've had jobs not in a long time, fortunately. I really enjoy my work now. But I've had jobs in the past I didn't like. I learned from those. I said, okay, what didn't I like about that? What was it that frankly frustrated me? And thought about that. Okay, so the next job I have, don't want to make those same mistakes. And maybe other mistakes in life we all do. Okay, that wasn't very smart, or that didn't really satisfy me. So what do I do differently here? Next time. So it's taking those experiences. So it's not just what you succeed at, but you learn, frankly, from your mistakes, your failures, whatever you want to call them. Those are just as important. And the nice thing about trying out things when you're a teenager, the risks are pretty low.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do think there's something in our world about we're so worried that people are about people failing. It's like
Yeah.
everybody fails.
Yeah. And if you don't fail, then how do you know what you can and can't do?
Exactly.
What are the steps of informed choice?
Okay, the steps. Oh, steps. I touched on these before, but there's really 4 or 5. There are person having information. So they have information, they're providing information, and there's the discussion. The second step is experiential. So that's the second one, not just having a discussion, but going out and trying out the choices or exploring them. And at a basic level for employment, and there's always discussions where the person says, well, they don't want to work.
Yeah.
Or they're not interested in working. And
Yeah.
I know that's a huge issue in Missouri as well as other states. It's like, if they've never worked, they have no work experience. Maybe the only experience they have is at a shelter workshop. They've never worked in the community.
Yeah.
They don't even they frankly, with due respect, they don't know what they're answering. So the only way they're going to be able to make a better informed choice is let's take you out in the community. Let's take you out and for some businesses. Let's maybe have you try out some do some short-term work experiences. Let's do some informational interviews. So it's getting those experiences down. So that's the second step. The third, as I mentioned, is the peer-to-peer discussions. And I think, again, something like we just keep, and it's not only just individual disabilities to individual disabilities, but it's parent to parent, family member to family member. And as I said earlier, I think that's something we collectively as a field need to really push more and empower, particularly self-advocates, on peer-to-peer work in terms of employment. The fourth piece, obviously, is identifying any barriers or issues and working to address them. And I think the fifth one is in the case of somebody who says, well, right now I don't want to work, or maybe there's reasons, medical reasons or whatever, that they aren't currently want to work, that we revisit that decision. That's not a one-time decision, but that we go back and visit it again. And so it really is those 5 steps are the real critical pieces of informed choice. And I should say, this is not just David Hoff's thoughts, but it's actually a process. That's actually a process that's been based on some guidance from the U.S. Department of Justice in terms of informed choice under Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Who should be I know the person should be involved with that informed choice, but who else should be involved?
Well, obviously, as the person, the family, but I would say, from my perspective, from employment, a critical person is the case manager, the support coordinator. I think one of the things, and then obviously the staff, if they're involved with an employment program or they're of some sort, the staff who they're involved with. And what I think is really needed is staff who are really understand what informed choice is. So,
Mhm.
I mean, we went through the 5 steps already,
Mhm.
but how to implement those steps,
Yeah.
how to even have a conversation that is positive about employment. Let's start with that. Like when, you're doing somebody's ISP or whatever you're doing on a complaint, it's like, you're not just checking the box off. Are you interested in employment? Yes or no? It's like, okay, let's talk about employment. Okay. Let's, what's your past experience? What do is this something of possible interest? Uh, and if the person says, well, I'm not interested, I don't want to work. Well, have you ever explored employment? Have you ever gone out and experienced anything? Well, maybe let's just start with, you know, put in your plan that, over the next few months, you're going to go out and with your tour businesses and do some informational interviews, do some short-term work experience. Let's make that part of it. And then let's revisit this. So I think the other thing that people often get hung up on is we're not talking about getting a job tomorrow. Let's start the exploratory process. But I think what happens too often is there is this very short discussion about employment as not an option or the person's not interested,
Mhm.
rather than saying, and frankly, Missouri is an employment first state. Employment is supposed to be a primary consideration in terms of service delivery of people for people who are working age. Therefore, we should be saying, okay, it's not do you want to work? It's like, let's help you figure out where you want to work.
Mhm.
And there are, basic steps we can take in that regard. And I think the other piece of informed choice when somebody is working also is just making sure that um, that there's ongoing conversations about satisfaction with work, satisfaction with hours.
Oh yeah.
Um, do they want to maybe try a new job? Are they looking
Mhm.
for a promotion? That's part of it as well. So people understand. Yes, those are things that are important as well. Um, but I think there's a real need, and something actually we're working on now is we're really starting to understand there's a real need for some pretty significant training with
Mhm.
staff and with case managers to really better understand that this is a much more complex issue than a lot of us, I think, recognize.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point that I never thought about, which
Mhm.
that's funny, is it doesn't stop when they get the job.
Yep,
They can revisit it if they want to wait or if they need to cut their hours or something.
mhm,
So always knowing that that informed choice should be a day-to-day thing and not
exactly.
stop.
It's not like a one-time thing. You
Yeah.
do it all the time. And I think that's a really important point, Candace, because I think when I talk about this stuff sometimes, it needs to be a culture of informed choice.
Yeah.
It's like that is like we always, and I'll say this from a staff perspective, having, been done direct support work, always, because I think lack of informed choice is almost ingrained in our system and ingrained in our
Mm.
culture for people with disabilities. Eh, Without getting too deep on this, I think I know I certainly grew up in a culture, and many of us do, where we were basically, you know, led to believe people with disabilities need others to make decisions on their behalf because that's best for the person, best for
Yeah.
society.
Mhm.
We That's the culture I grew up with. It,
Mhm.
it it still permeates a lot of our service system, a lot of our culture in general regarding people with disabilities. So we've all got to fight it every single day.
Yeah.
David Hoff has to fight it. Candace Cunningham's fight because we can all be in that habit because people with disabilities often think, oh, I don't have the right to make decisions. I don't have the right to this stuff. So I think
Yeah.
there's such a real need for real cultural change in terms of all of this, and that's a big piece of just us, and particularly I think programs and services and staff need to be really calling them, looking themselves in the mirror and saying, are we really enabling informed choice? Or are we making decisions either on behalf of somebody? And oftentimes it's not like we're saying, do this, do that. Here's what I think. et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes it can be very, very subtle
Mm-hmm.
in terms of even just how the things we're saying, how we say them, uh, things like, "You don't want to do that, do you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you sure
Yeah.
you want to work?" Uh, versus, I think it'll be really great for you to go out and explore employment. Let's go out and I actually say sometimes people ask me, well, shouldn't staff be neutral? And I say, well, Missouri's an employment first state. We're saying, people getting services from the Division of Development of Disabilities, and we're saying, yep, employment should be a priority. So yes, our staff should be pro-employment.
Yeah.
But no, obviously nobody's going to be forced to go to work.
Yeah.
Nobody is, nothing like that. But we should be encouraging people to work just like we encourage all adults to work.
Yeah. And I think I know I feel like I do this as a self advocate, and I shouldn't say this, but
Yeah,
I whenever I am in my ISP plan,
yeah,
with my support coordinator, I do look to my mom, and my mom's
yeah.
like, "Well, this is your plan. I'm not going,
Oh, good,
but
very good for your mom.
and she's always like that. But I think we need more people like that, to I don't know how, but yeah.
Well, I think you just made the point that I think I was trying to make, which is there is, and I mean this in a power dynamic
Yes.
between staff and individuals, between parents and family members and individuals. That is very challenging sometimes.
Mm.
Um, and I think that that's something, again, where everybody thinks, oh, yes, I'm very benign. I'm nice. I'll let them do what they want. I'm not a barrier to informed choice. I think we're much more of a barrier, than we realize.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think partially, and I'll just say this about staff, and service providers,
Mm.
they control a lot of the resources. They have,
They
what
do.
they're doing is, for the person to pursue employment is going to be very dependent on them. So there's a dynamic there that can be challenging, I think.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Well, I think we answered all my questions. Do you have anything else?
Um, so I'll end with, with one or two thoughts. Number one, I think it's really important to also sometimes to understand a culture of choice within different cultures. Um,
Oh, yeah.
and I think it's kind of one of those things I don't know a ton about,
Hmm.
because I'm an Anglo white straight man, but I feel like there are cultures where choice making is a very different thing. Because I know I come from oh yes, we're independent, we're on our own, you get to
Yeah.
control your life and all of that. Other cultures are not always necessarily that, and so I think that's another piece of this to think about. Okay, what is the culture that this person lives within?
Hmm.
Because it's really different. Because other cultures are much more collective in some ways than the culture I've grown up in, and
Hmm.
it's the dynamics are very different, and that gets into a whole other area. But I think that's just something for people to think about as they work with different communities. I'd say the other thing is from a uh, self advocate perspective is it's really important that self advocates truly understand what informed choice is and what
Yes.
it's all about, and that the entities that are providing services to them, not only understand it but have clear policies and
Hmm.
training and directives on informed choice. All that's really important, and that are really monitoring, um, the implementation of it. I mean, I think it's something that's it seems simple, but okay, somebody has a person-centered plan. You do job exploration for, um, a certain type of job. Let's say, working in an office and
Hmm.
in a nice quiet office, for example, and then the person gets a job and they're working in a food service, and it's like, okay, wait a second,
How, how did that
what happened
happen?
here?
Yeah.
We have not done a good job here in terms of
Yeah.
informed choice. The person was making choices, and then so and that's just one example, but I think it's also part of this is monitoring. Okay, how are we how are we ensuring informed choices happening in terms of service delivery, and what are the outcomes? Um, so
Well, I appreciate. Thank you very much, David. I've learned a lot, and
okay, great.
um, thank you for taking your time out.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Yes, I hope you have a great Thanksgiving and great holidays.
You too. You too. Take care, Candace.
Thank you.